Welcome to Empowered in Tech, Women in Tech Netherlands, the podcast, a show brought to you by the Women in Tech Netherlands community, where we amplify the voices of women shaping the future of technology. I'm your host, Ilaria Severi, an expert in branding, social media, marketing, and more. Each episode features inspiring stories from trailblazing women in our network who have overcome challenges, broken barriers, and built thriving careers in tech. Today's episode explores the critical role of ethical leadership in technology, inspired by a heartfelt message shared at the G100 Leadership Summit and written by Marisa Monteiro BorsBoom, our guest for this episode. Marisa is a true Renaissance woman and a trailblazer in policy, governance, and emerging technologies. As an action woman in the Women in Tech Global Movement and the Dutch chapter, she's also Vice President of the European Legal Tech Association and CEO of Vera Legal. Marisa is shaping the future of legal innovation and ESG initiatives. She's also the founder of the Humanity of Things Agency and co-leads the Augmented Human Intelligence Axis at Mino University. Marisa's motto, License to Be and Create, reflects her unstoppable drive to push boundaries and inspire change. Let's dive into her incredible journey. But before we do that and dive into today's conversation, we'd like again to thank our sponsor, DMN Westwing House. Westwing House, it's a perfect match because they strongly align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are also incredibly important to us. At DMN Westwing House, the company is passionate not only about empowering women, but also about welcoming more women into their organization. They're committed to fostering a culture of inclusion and diversity, which directly connects with several of the United Nations key goals, such as equal opportunities, education, and social inclusion. DMN Westinghouse believes that unique experiences and perspectives come from a diverse workforce, and gender diversity plays a key role in driving innovation and success. As an inclusive employer, DMN Westinghouse is dedicated to providing an environment where women can thrive, especially in technology and engineering careers. By prioritizing diversity, they actively contribute to their social goals, creating a workplace where all employees, regardless of gender, can excel and reach their full potential. But let's now get into today's episode. Hi, Marisa. Welcome to our podcast. How are you?
Hi, Ilaria. Starting the year 2025 on the 21st of January, a very interesting day to record our episode. So, starting well.
Great. I'm super excited to kick indeed the new year and the second episode of this new series of podcasts with you. And first of all, so the introduction said a lot about you, but we still want to know more. So can you tell us more about your involvement with Women in Tech Netherlands and how did you first get involved with the organization?
Well, Women in Tech Netherlands, I'm actually since the beginning, the birth of the chapter. I was actually in the launch of the chapter in Amsterdam, where I had the opportunity to meet Miss Ayumi Moore, our founder from the Global. And well, I think one thing led to the other. First, I started cooperating with the Global entity. And then, of course, you can be global, but you want to be a part of some real continuum group because, of course, you need a little bit that side as well. So the Netherlands became the chapter that, of course, I was part of and more and more in the last 2 years. Then it was really boots on the ground and start doing as much as I could here.
All right. And can you tell us more about how the organization empowers women and why ethical leadership is an integral part of its mission?
Well, I think I can give you the long speech of how this organization empowers women, but I think I will maybe make it easier. I think we should talk about us. I think it empowers us as a group, right? The organization has a mission, has a vision. Each chapter has the opportunity to also, of course, tailor-made to their own realities. I think nothing more is the wish of our leader, Ayumi, is to bring more women to tech, right? There's a huge, big fight, a 5 million goal. But I think we are doing very, very different things in the ground with different teams with different resources and with different leaders in each country. And of course, you do also what you can with what you have. And I think one of the things that we were able to do, I think in an early stage, was even to start talking about the topic. Sometimes just talking about the topic is one of the big things you can do. Why? Because then it becomes something to discuss. And you say, why? Well, and then you start talking about the whys of bringing women to technology. And not only the technology of the real, I think we have a misconception sometimes of what is a women in technology, and you are an engineer. Well, you can be working in a technology company from different perspectives, from different roles, and you should be able to bring those women together. Myself as a lawyer, and now more and more in the policy side, it's fascinating for me to be in tech, not from the perspective of an engineer, but working with all the other fields. So I think that is in the first line is what we do, is inspire each other, is talking about the topic. Why do we need to keep talking about all of this? And I think most of us also are now in what we believe it's the giving back, the ethical side of our own leadership, in a sense of we understand why we need to do this. We understand that we need to bring part of our time, part of our capacity to hopefully help others to thrive in this area, and not only this area. So it's in a nutshell what I think we propose ourselves to do.
And I mean, this connects also to your own path, your own career. And as you just said and mentioned, it's important to talk about certain topics, but also to show examples, right? Especially to younger women, and to show what is possible. So, I mean, your career is really fascinating. And as both a CEO and a general counsel, what inspired you to pursue these leadership roles, and how has your journey shaped your perspective on ethical leadership?
Well, I think normally I joke with people saying that I didn't pursue anything, things pursue me.
Okay.
And I think it's about, look, I think we all face what we wish to do and what we can do. And I think when you start maturing a little bit, you understand where your talents can be put to good service. And there's nothing wrong of not occupying positions of leadership. Really nothing wrong. I think in the last decades, we've been pushed to try to fabricate leadership. I'm a little bit, in that sense, more conservative. I think we have roles and we should be responsible for the roles we have. And certain roles have certain descriptions. And in my roles, I normally have the description that is considered to be leadership. But for me, it's just, I need to do my job. I need to be accountable for what I do. I need to deliver to my clients. I need to deliver to the organizations what they need from me. So I do separate what is leadership from roles. And I also think that was not always optimal, that we confuse roles with leadership. Yeah. Just because you are in a role, then you become a leader, which is not true. And you have a lot of people that, not being in positions of leadership, are natural born leaders, right? So I still don't like the word, as I think it's quite obvious. I also like to tease saying that I'm not a leader, but I'm definitely not a follower. And I prefer to then stay in that part. I like to just, like I say, don't run away from my obligations. And when it's time, and if it's needed, people that indeed lead, sometimes I don't have any problems in doing it. So I think that's a little bit how I built this career of 20 years. It's by staying very much attuned to my roles, but also to my personality and my dreams. I always wanted to be, I used to end my CVs in the time that I did apply for any vacancy with a sentence that is like, for me, it was really important being of service. And it's still, it means that I don't like the idea useless. I think we should, as I said, in that sense, I'm very, very traditional and standing tall for what you do, to do it with pride, to work very hard independently if it's really your time or your obligation. I was raised in a family like that. So in the end of the day, I like to be useful. I like to do things well when I can, and I try to that I can as always. But again, I'm not perfect, so I do.
But I think it's very refreshing what you just mentioned, because nowadays, yeah, there are more women in the narrative for sure, but the narrative is if you want to be a woman of success, you need to be in a leadership position, right? It's like unless you're in a leadership position, then you cannot define yourself as successful. And instead, what you just said, I think touches a very, very important point in this conversation, because it's about what you bring to the table. And it's not only the leader who brings to the table, right? It's the team, it's the people around also the leader. Because it's not always true that all leaders are good leaders, first of all, even if they are named leaders. And maybe they're good leaders just because they have a great team or they have great people around them, right? So I think that's a very, very interesting point. And yeah, we could keep talking about this more and more for sure. But it's nice and refreshing, I would say, to hear that from you. But then again, this, goes to my following question, which is the typical question, right? That we have to ask, especially when we talk about women in leadership, women in tech. And how did you cope and how did you overcome challenges in what it's, still a male-dominated industry?
I think especially my generation, and I'm going to be very precise in the generation side. I think it's very important that we understand that we have different backgrounds. I was raised in a country like Portugal. I live now in the Netherlands, but it's very important, this context, because it makes the total difference. Being raised in Portugal in the decades I was is totally different of being raised in the Netherlands. The country was not progressive at all. And I'm already a child of freedom, but for a few years, I would have not been born in freedom. So there's so many things that are important in this context, in this sense. So in that, I need to admit that I never had any trouble to work among men. And I think looking back, a big part of the generation of at least my generation of women that succeeded were women that actually were very comfortable working in non-comfortable worlds. And again, the topic of personality, my personality also being a lawyer, I trained myself to be quite strong because you need to, right? You need to, you cannot afford not to. And that played in my favor because, if you want to be a good lawyer, you don't want to please anybody. Actually, you need to learn how to be the annoying in the room. It hurts in the beginning, but then you understand that that's the way to go, right? And that helped me. Not only the fact that I trained myself to be a little bit what others would say that would be more strong. I would not see that as strong. I would see that as part of my role. But that made me quite comfortable among places that maybe other women would find less comfortable to be with. At the other side of the coin, I can actually tell you that because you train yourself in certain ways, then when you start working in a more female environment, people like me have more trouble than they would like to admit. Because the way that you trained yourself to be more assertive is seen by your colleagues sometimes as too aggressive because we're not smiling enough, we're not being accommodating of the others enough, you are too strong. So actually, big part of it, my generation and some of the women that I know never felt very comfortable in any of the places, but the rules sometimes of those men world were easier for us to understand. We knew what we could count with.
I understand. It also makes me think about the fact that we talk a lot about female energy, male energy, right? And when male energy is brought forward by a woman, that's where the hurdle comes sometimes, right? Because if a male energy is brought by a man, that's totally fine. Or like that's what people expect already. And so there is less pushback on that. But I can totally see what you just mentioned, that probably you were trained, you kind of also thrived in that energy. And there's nothing bad about that. It's just who you are, exactly. But it's different or not what people are used to. Like it's combining two worlds into one. And then they're like, yeah, but this shouldn't be the case, right?
I think it's even the bigger sin, if you think.
Yeah.
Because in that case, as I said, men, they know how to hurt you in those places. But I think in the end of the day, it hurts more when it's a woman hurting you by you being strong. So it's the ultimate irony.
Yeah, it is. And is part of a narrative that we also need to talk more about, I think. so that it's less of a, a taboo, because sometimes it's also like, I feel it's a sort of like
totally.
taboo, right? Like, and because you're a woman and you should be motherly and you should be welcoming all the time regardless, and instead it's not like that. It's just it doesn't have to.
And also, one of the things that I feel like we need to start talking more as we go, because again, life is a continuum. And the last decades we fight for certain things. I think we are now in a very interesting and pivotal way of talking about women, because it's almost like you have the feeling that you are testing things that you created, and you are seeing the backlash of some of the things that you not considered in the beginning. And now we need to start talking about those things so you can go to the next chapter of it. And I think in that sense, we as women, it's so short. I love history, right? And if you think about in history terms, it's so narrow, this window of the time that women are actively engaged in society full force. It's almost like we are all still in a big experiment. Right, where our grandmothers would have a total different view, then our mothers still have a different, my generation, your generation, you come after me. So it's almost like if you are a scientist, you will understand the different results of the different moments of this generations, and what we are talking among ourselves. Because as I say, one thing was the wish, another thing was the results of the things we wish. And we are also now trying to understand things that were like the backlash of some of the choices we did, because we cannot foresee the future, and we could not understand that this choice would mean this. And I think that brings us to a little bit the topic that you also, of course, mentioned, and it is one that brought us here today. That I think one of the biggest ethical concerns of myself is that we as women have the courage to talk about the difficult topics that are now on the table. And one of the biggest topics among us is us. And us as our relationships, our interactions, us and ourselves as individuals. What are we really creating, and what is the outcome of all of this that we were told that also we wanted? Because unfortunately, we still did not really create our world. And my proposition of thought is very provocative, because first we were under a system that taught for us, we were not able to think. And then we were a few decades in a system that just said the contrary. So we still didn't have the time as females to really think about ourselves as individuals, as our relationship of mind, body, ourselves, our real wishes. Because unfortunately, if the generation, for example, of our grandmothers could not even work, some of this new generation are you are told, as you so well said, if you don't do this, you are not successful. So you are still not thinking about what you really want and what is really the definition of success for you as an individual that thinks consciously, that goes beyond. And also because there's not a lot of tradition in thinking. If you see, as women, nobody tells you to study philosophy and to bring new philosophies or thoughts. You are not in some tables, like the political table, the economical table, the thinking table. We're still not there. And it's very important that we understand that is a long way to mature, while the male society matured in this sense. They know their place in the world, or even if they now get a little bit nervous. But what I mean is that they had centuries, right, of thinking about themselves, of thinking about the world, of thinking about systems, and we were not put in that role. So I think the next chapter for all of us is to be able to have deep and sometimes difficult conversations where we as women try to understand better who we are really in the end of the day, what we really want, and what it means to choose certain things to our lives. And if we are able to go a little bit beyond that mask, and we are able to start talking very deeply about it, I think we will be able to go to a better place, because I do not think that women are in a good place right now.
And this is what you mentioned in your letter to Linda, I assume, at the G100 Leadership Summit, right?
Yes.
And what was the response to that?
Well, the response was something that was very special for me, because apparently everybody cried in that room.
Oh, wow.
And that says, I think what it says in the end of the day is that the message hits hard, especially the people that are already feeling all of those words deep down, right? And you can be of any age. We know that different ages have different issues, but in the end of the day, I think what I managed to also do is to, by being a little bit more vulnerable myself, allowing others to not portray that image that in those kind of events, sometimes we have like, we are so amazing, we are so empowered, and sometimes, if not most of the time, so many of us carry so many burdens and so many pains that now, because we are so strong, we cannot even talk about it, right? And I think it's a little bit that knowing that Linda was crying, that everybody was crying, not because we are weak, but actually because we are reclaiming our capacity to use our emotions. And we should. That was very, very special. And, Linda is, I think we desperately also need to look to women that are in a different stage, what I call I have a group of two women that recently we made a little joke, but I hope that joke will grow. That we call it the Bazooka Club, and the Bazooka Club is one day I will do a whole story about it. But it's really where women start getting free of the likability effect. And if I look to a woman like Linda, I see a woman that had so many challenges in her life, and she keeps flourishing. She's a senior lady. She's a powerhouse, but she continues to do so in a way that she keeps putting women on the stage. She never. That's one thing that I find fascinating. She can occupy her space, but leaving space for others and bringing other women to the stage. But I tell her so many times that in the moments that life gets difficult, it's by imagining women like her that I also try to overcome my own problems. So I do need her. I need her, and I need a few of the good ones. I have a handful of women. I could be for sure the young sister. I don't want to call that. They could be my mother, some of them, but we desperately need this big matriarchs, this big forces of nature that also are bringing part of what they learn. And as I say, we need to do better. This is not going to be just by occupying jobs. This is so much more than this. And that's what I talk about in my letter to Linda. It's time that we yes, of course we need to be in the job market. Yes, we need, and why? Not even, sometimes people forget, why do we need to be in the job market? If nothing else, to fight poverty, that it's still so much bigger among women in Europe. Even there's studies that show us that it's still a problem for women, poverty, but also this idea that the way that life is now designed, we need to stand. We need to be able to provide for ourselves, and not so much because we don't believe that men cannot provide, but because we're not in a society anymore that would even give us that benefit of we could have someone else to provide. So I think it's actually, when we talk about working, is a matter of survival, and we need to educate our women that we need to survive in that sense. We need to do sensitive plans with our life. But I would, as I say, I would invite all of us women to also talk about why we should not only talk about jobs and C-suits and also talk about the desperation that many have because they need to now play another role. We used to say we don't want to play society roles because all these expectations. Are we not now also trying to do the same? So, like I say, it's time for us to think freely and among different generations and different backgrounds, so we can have better lives for all of us. We need to create better lives for us.
And I mean, to wrap this up, what would you tell to the younger generations? What would be your advice? I mean, you said a lot of things and I could already hear a lot of advices, but a lot of pieces of advice, but I would say, what is the number one advice that you would like to give them?
the sounding a cliche, but it's true. Life is way too short. So do for the young generations, try to have a plan in a sense that you stand on your own feet. But because you need, as all of us, we need to survive. Nobody told us, but you should open a book. I still love books and papers and pens. And open and try to understand. I would go very practical. If I would need to depend on myself and myself alone, how much do I need to earn? What kind of jobs are providing this kind of money? And then in a second stage of my life, will I want to match my life with anybody else? And what that's going to mean? And then independent of who you match with, are you going to have a family? I think this is very, very important because first of all, we are postponing these conversations for way too long. You should not start thinking if you want to have a family too late. That is the truth, And it's a little bit sad because technology, even for women, or in this case, when you hear now, oh, I can wait, we'll go for the children later. And then you hear the reality of the conversations is it's too late. Maybe we can do this differently. And that goes for the infrastructure of your life. Think about your life as the infrastructure you need. And try to separate very well what is the career and the job. If it's a job, it's not worthy you sacrifice everything you do. And the difference is very simple. Do that exercise. If I stop paying you now, do you do this podcast? If you do, you love podcasting. I'm not saying that you should not be paid. It's totally different.
I'm not getting paid, by the way, for this podcast. I would like to, I'm volunteering for it.
This is the way I show that. That's why I know.
Like our audience to know I am not paid. I do this as a volunteer.
And literally, this is where we also know that Ilaria loves what she does.
Exactly. I love it.
And that's for me, the career side. You are putting your energy, no matter if people pay you. Some people just do it if they are paid. And for me, jobs and careers are very different in that. What it tells me is that no matter what happens, you already decide that there's this part of you that you want to work on it. You see? So it's almost like an angel investor. You are investing in yourself by doing this. This is also what I do in my work, in my volunteer work of Women in Tech. Because in the sense, none of us, unfortunately, in a sense, are paid. But in the other sense, we can also do things and experiment things that we maybe would not. And that's another advice I give. Experiment as much as you can. Don't narrow yourself down. And volunteering for me was always an opportunity to test a different side of me, a different dimension that maybe I would not be paid for it because it would still not my skills, or because I was not even sure if I wanted to do it. And for me, I never considered, I stopped using the word volunteer. I'm an angel investor of my own life, and the return on investment is having moments like this where I'm very fortunate to be talking with a woman like you that I admire immensely.
Thank you
and
so
that
much.
is also building something for all of us. So you see,
and I think also what you say, it's about like you decide to volunteer because you decide to be of service, and you can be a service by doing your job for sure, and then you can also get paid. So it's always a win-win, but you can always be of service. I mean, we have also many talents, and why not use these talents to help someone else, or to, create stories, or to talk to people, to what we're doing today. So I truly appreciate you joining this episode. So I would say very, very deep. Very deep, and I think it's gonna leave a lot of food for thoughts to our listeners. So thank you so much, Marisa, for joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me, and continue to do this amazing work that, well, who knows if can become paid in
A
future in a big
global phenomenon, let's say.
that. Let's wish for that.
Exactly. And well, thank you so much to all our listeners for joining us on Empowered in Tech, Women in Tech Netherlands, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll hear another inspiring story from a woman shaping the future of technology. Until then, keep empowering and inspiring. Till next time.